Everyone's talking about it. The Rock's extreme weight loss shocks the internet. Some say he's sick, others say he just stopped using substances, and some claim he just lost weight for a role, but the truth is, no one dares to say it. Today, I wanted to give you a raw, unfiltered analysis. Not to criticize anyone, not to create buzz, but simply to understand what this means for him, and above all, what it can also teach you, whether you're 25, 35, 45, or even older. In short, it doesn't matter. Because what The Rock is experiencing is actually the same biological reality for you and me. So just ask yourself this: how can a man who embodies strength, power, the superhuman, the Hollywood dream, transform so much in just a few months? And yes, we're talking about The Rock, the guy who, for 20 years, sold us the image of the indestructible man, the superhero. The guy who trains at 4:30 in the morning, who eats his 6,000-calorie pancakes on Saturdays with his massive cheat meals, who makes everyone believe he's the hardest worker in the room. So why overnight does he suddenly appear so thin, emaciated, with 25 to 30 kilos less muscle? That's not just a simple diet. It's not an Instagram filter either. It's a truly brutal transformation. And behind it, there are truths that nobody wants to hear. Well, I know what that's like too, because I've been through it. 30 years of bodybuilding, 35 competitions. From Pro Card to Musclemania Pro, IFBB Pro, I've experienced the stage. I've been through extreme diets, the sacrifices. I've also known the fall with my back surgery and the complications that followed, months stuck in bed, my hormonal system completely destroyed, and the need to rebuild everything from scratch. And that's why today I can talk to you about what The Rock is going through, not just as a spectator, but as someone who has faced the same challenges. And in this video, I wanted to give you the truth about this transformation. We're going to talk in particular about his role in the smashing machines, the rumors about illnesses, the reality of substances, the weight of age, and above all, the real message behind all of this. Because behind this shocking transformation, there's a universal lesson. You can't cheat biology, even if your name is The Rock. And that's a truth that concerns all of us. For more than 20 years, The Rock embodied the archetype of the superhuman. 120 kilos of muscle, charisma as wide as life itself, as they say, and boundless energy. He's the guy who says, "I'm up at 4:30 in the morning to go train." He's the guy who posts his massive cheat meals with over 6,000 calories, his 30-centimeter high pancakes, his double extra large pizzas. He's the guy who makes us believe he's the hardest worker in the room. It has to be said, it worked all these years. We saw him as a machine, as a titan, the very image of discipline, brute strength, and success. And in Hollywood, he became the ultimate muscular hero, the one who always plays the same role, the invincible colossus. But then, in 2025, The Rock appears at the Venice Film Festival for the premiere of The Smashing Machine, and that's when the shock hits. He's not the same man at all anymore. He lost between 25 and 30 kilos. A slimmer figure, a gaunt face, drawn features, melted muscles. So of course the internet goes wild. He must have cancer. Or maybe that's just the Olympic face. It's the end of The Rock. Millions of fans are stunned. The media is going wild. And just one question: what happened? And that's where it gets interesting. Because The Rock wasn't just an actor, he had truly become a symbol that no matter your age, your genetics, or your schedule, you can always be huge, ripped, charismatic, the symbol that absolute discipline could make up for everything. And overnight, that image collapses, the invincible titan appears vulnerable, the colossus starts to crack. And of course, that's scary, because if The Rock can shrink like that, what does it mean for you and me? But before we jump to easy rumors, let's set the record straight a bit. Did he lose weight for a role? Is he really sick? Or is it simply biology taking over again? So, let's break this down together, point by point, and you'll see that the truth is very different from what the media are saying. The first explanation you hear everywhere is The Rock lost weight for his role in The Smashing Machine. But if you actually take 5 minutes to think about it, it makes absolutely no sense. Take a look at some of the leaked clips, because Mark Kerr, the character he plays, is a monster. He's a 120-kilogram colossus, a wrestler. A juiced-up UFC fighter, huge, massive. And to fit this role, The Rock couldn't show up looking thin. On the contrary, he absolutely had to keep his size. And look at the images from the film, the reviews from the Venice premiere. The Rock is really massive, broad, powerful, in his usual build, around 115 to 120 kilograms. It's not at all a slimmed-down Dwayne Johnson here. It's an even more impressive Rock, fitting perfectly with the role of Mark Kerr. And that's a fact. You don't lose 25 to 30 kilos and still keep that kind of physique, no way. So when did this weight loss happen? Well, quite simply, after filming was finished, the movie was already wrapped, the fight scenes were done. Those scenes were already shot, the role was done, secured, and it was only afterwards, in the months that followed, that he really slimmed down. That's when he appeared. Much thinner, with a gaunt face and his shoulders that seem to have shrunk at least. It looks like all his muscle mass has disappeared. Now, just to be clear, everything is relative because the guy still weighs a bit over 100 kilos. So no, the shocking transformation we saw in Venice, that wasn't for Mark Kerr. It happened much later. So why does everyone say he lost weight for this role? It's simple. It's because that's a somewhat reassuring version. It's easier to say it's Hollywood, it's for a movie, rather than admit the truth. That at 53, you can't keep 120 kilos of muscle forever, even with all the discipline in the world, even with all the money in the world. And of course, the studios and the media prefer to sell an excuse, but the facts say otherwise. What we saw in Venice wasn't an actor who got in shape for a role, it was truly a colossus who had to pivot, whether voluntarily or not. And the real question is why? Is it ultimately for a role? Is it for his health? Or is it simply biology taking over again? And that's what we're going to explore together now, a little more in detail. The second explanation is the one given by The Rock himself in the end. And this one, for once, it's true. He explained at the Toronto Festival that he was intentionally losing weight. Not for Mark Kerr, but for his next role, his next film called Lizard Music, directed by Benny Safdie. And in this film, The Rock plays a character who is completely opposite to everything he's done throughout his career. In fact, it's an eccentric man, 70 years old, by the way, nicknamed the Chicken Man. So nothing to do with the bodybuilder superheroes or the invincible giants he's played before. Here, for once, it's a much darker, more complex, more vulnerable role. And to play him, he had to completely change his appearance. He really had to slim down his figure this time and leave behind the look of 120 kilos of pure muscle. And this is actually based on real facts. In Toronto, during a press event, he stated, "So he's losing weight, and it's intentional, and he still has a lot more to lose." Just imagine the contrast after all these years. The Rock was all about Fast and Furious, Black Adam, Hercules, always the same role, the giant bodybuilder, pure brute strength, and now suddenly he's shifting to an eccentric, weakened, almost fragile character. This is truly a career pivot, exactly like what Arnold Schwarzenegger did after the 1990s. Arnold couldn't play the eternal Terminator anymore, he had to take on other roles. He even did comedy, by the way, and now today, it's The Rock. He wants to do the same thing in his own way. And why is that? Quite simply because at 53 years old, you can't keep 120 kilos of muscle forever. Your heart, your joints, your recovery, everything eventually reminds you of that. And The Rock, he's smart enough to understand it, and he knows he won't be able to play the Colossus forever either. The Colossus until his death. So he absolutely has to evolve, and now this role of the Chicken Man might actually be the best excuse, the best pretext to make that shift. So officially, the truth is simple. The Rock is losing weight for his new role, for his next role, and that's true, but between us, is it really just for a role, or is it also a hidden message? Maybe a bit of an admission that his body, his health could no longer keep up with this superhuman pace. And that's what we're going to look at next, especially with the rumors, the speculation, and above all, the biological signs that can't be ignored. As soon as The Rock appeared thinner, the internet inevitably went wild. Everyone had an explanation, most of which, of course, were false, as usual. So let's go through the most widespread rumors one by one. The first rumor, of course, is the most dramatic. The Rock has cancer. So why? Well, simply because his face looked much more gaunt with very sharp features. A lot of people also called it the Olympic face or the cancer face. But let's be logical. When you lose muscle mass and water retention, your face changes. It's only natural. And I know it. When I competed, my face was also completely gaunt during my competitions, and it makes sense. And the swelling could also come from the use, obviously, of certain hormones like testosterone, which increases aromatization and therefore estrogen as well, resulting in a rounder, puffier face. And of course, either when you stop or when you lower the dosages, your face also becomes slimmer because you lose water retention as well. So it's not a sign of illness, it's just biology, plain and simple. The second explanation that's also trendy is that he took Ozempic. Ozempic is a peptide that allows you to... It's used for weight loss, but generally it's actually a medication that's used to treat diabetes. And nowadays it's used to help people who are overweight, significantly overweight, lose weight. And basically it suppresses appetite and helps you lose fat. But The Rock, he didn't really have much fat to lose since he was already lean. And you don't lose 25 to 30 kilos of muscle with Ozempic. No, you lose fat, but you generally don't lose your muscle mass. So honestly, I think it has nothing to do with it. And then the third rumor, which I think is the most credible, is this: The Rock stopped using substances. And here again, to be honest, that's probably the truth, because biologically, at 53 years old, you can't maintain 120 kilos of lean muscle, even if you're the most disciplined person in the world. So obviously, when you use substances, your body holds on to more muscle, more glycogen, more intramuscular water, and also more water in your face and skin. So when you stop or even just reduce, your body returns to a more natural balance. So yes, you slim down, your face gets thinner, and your muscles, of course, also lose volume. And that's exactly what we've seen with The Rock. So yes, he probably reduced or even stopped certain substances, or maybe he just stayed on light TRT, and his physique shows it. I can talk about this because I've experienced it myself after more than 30 extreme competitions. Obviously, my hormonal system, it kind of gave out. Not because of repeated steroid cycles, like many people like to say, but actually because of repeated destructive diets. And as a result, I had to go on TRT, a replacement therapy, just to function normally. And here too, my physique changed a bit, obviously. I saw the difference in my face, in my muscle mass. So, I'm also speaking from experience. And when I look at The Rock today, I know how to recognize that look. It's the look of a guy who has really lowered his dosages this time. So no, The Rock isn't sick, right? He didn't lose size because of some medication at the Olympics, but certainly, yes, he probably had to stop or reduce certain substances, and that changes everything, because it's true that it makes a big difference. The real question is, was it just for a role, or was it a health choice, a decision to go the distance? And that's what we're going to look at now in a bit more detail. Officially then, The Rock says he lost weight for his next role, but there is no serious evidence that he is ill. There's nothing out there about that. And there's another truth as well, one that no one dares to say. Carrying 120 kilograms of muscle at 53 years old is no small thing. And if you don't take that into account, your body at some point will remind you of it. So, when you see a giant weighing 120 kilograms, you think, wow, what strength, what discipline. But what you don't see is mostly the invisible weight. With every heartbeat, it has to send blood through a huge body. It pumps a massive amount, so your heart is working under overload, just like a car engine that's constantly running at full throttle. And so, whether you're obese or whether you're 120 kilograms of muscle, it's almost the same for the heart. And then there are the joints, the knees, the hips, the back. All of that is still supporting a mass that biology itself wasn't designed for. And recovery too. The older you get, of course, the more your hormonal and nervous system struggle to handle such heavy, frequent training sessions. So at 25, you can get away with it. At 35, you really start to feel the limits. And after 50, it truly becomes a huge debt that your body demands you pay back. And it's not as if The Rock has never had any warning signs. He has already spoken publicly a few years ago about heart problems and fragile arteries. He's had injuries and surgeries. So imagine you're 53 years old, you weigh over 120 kilos, you're filming, doing stunts, MMA for a role, bodybuilding, 6 days out of 7. At some point, your body is going to tell you to stop, unfortunately, and maybe that's what's happening now. In fact, ultimately, the hidden truth behind this Chicken Man role is that officially he's losing weight to play a more fragile, older character. But in reality, it might also be an opportunity for him to simply scale things back, to protect his health and increase his longevity. Because we all know The Rock is very smart, otherwise he wouldn't be where he is today. And he knows he can't be a Superman his whole life. He has kids, he has a family, he has a career to extend. So yes, it's a role, but it's also probably a survival choice. Now, The Rock hasn't said this officially, but you don't need to be a doctor to understand it. Once again, at 53 years old, carrying 120 kilos of muscle is a one-way ticket to the hospital. It's better to be a bit leaner and live 20 years longer than to stay huge and ripped and never see your kids grow up. And that's a truth that concerns all of us. Because even if The Rock has to slow down, we also need to understand that we have to respect our own limits. So let's talk now about the image that The Rock has built. And I want to be clear, this is not at all to criticize him. On the contrary, because I really like him and he has inspired me a lot. Because what he has accomplished is truly immense and enormous. He has inspired millions of people not just to lift weights, but also to push themselves in life, simply put, in their goals. He built a colossal business empire and remains one of the most positive and inspiring figures of our time. And just for that, major respect. But let's be honest, The Rock didn't exactly start from nothing either. He was born into a family of wrestlers. His father, Rocky Johnson, was already a WWE star. His grandfather Peter Maivia was a Samoan wrestling legend, so he already had a name, he already had a network, he already had a foot in the door. But let's be clear, that doesn't mean his life was easy either. Because at 14, his family was evicted from an apartment in Hawaii. So he experienced relative poverty, he went through tough times, even got arrested for car theft, by the way. And his career as an American football player was more or less a failure. So cut from the NFL, sent back from Canada. So yes, it's true, maybe he had a legacy to start with, but he also went through real hardships. And it's ultimately this combination of family connections and real struggles that truly shaped him. But where it gets interesting is in the way his image was marketed. Because for more than 20 years, Hollywood and The Rock have built a myth. So, the man who gets up at 4:30 in the morning to go train, the colossus who eats 6,000 calories of pancakes every Saturday, the hardest worker in the room. Is it true, 100%? Well, no, it's the opposite. It's simply tailored to inspire, to sell, to feed the character. And that's where the problem lies. Because yes, relentless discipline does work and it's real, but no, you don't become The Rock just with pancakes, waking up at 4:30 in the morning and willpower. He also had exceptional genetics, coaches, medical teams, immense resources, and probably pharmacological aids that he has never publicly admitted to. That's the gap between storytelling and biological reality. But once again, that doesn't make him a fraud. Not at all. On the contrary, he's a hard worker. He's someone who turned his failures into an empire. And in that sense, he remains an incredible source of inspiration even today. And that's the nuance. You have to admire his journey while understanding that his image was tailored for Hollywood and that biological reality sooner or later always catches up with everyone, even him. So no, Dwayne Johnson is not a liar who cheated his whole life. On the contrary, he's a living legend. But like all legends, the image was bigger than the reality. And I too have experienced that moment when image and reality collide head-on. So why am I telling you all this? Because behind the myth of The Rock, there's also a lesson for you. You don't need to have 120 kilos of muscle, you don't need to look like a superhero either. You just need a body that works. A body that gives you confidence, a body that allows you to live a long life, to play with your children, to travel, to build projects. And that doesn't come from Instagram filters or Hollywood, nor from miracle shortcuts. It comes from three simple things: discipline, intelligence, and using the right levers at the right time. And that's real strength. It's not about being a mountain of muscle, but about having a real physique that serves you throughout your life, not the other way around. So yes, officially, The Rock lost weight for a role. But behind that role, there's also a biological reality that no one can escape. Not him, not me, not you. And you can inspire millions of people, build an empire, have the best coaches in the world. In the end, your body always reminds you of the rules of the game. And I can tell you that because I've also been through more than 35 competitions in 30 years of bodybuilding, and with everything that comes with it. And I learned one thing: you can't cheat biology. You can always push it back, you can optimize it, but sooner or later it catches up with you. And that's why I wanted to share this analysis with you. Not at all to criticize The Rock, but just so you understand that the real victory isn't having 120 kilos of muscle. The real victory is having a body that works, that lasts, that supports you in your life, in your projects, and with your family. And if you want to learn how to build that kind of body, to use the right methods without wasting your time on Instagram or Hollywood lies, you can try my app, Metamorphics, with all my programs, whether it's at the gym, body weight, or with resistance bands. You also get access to over 1,000 recipes, a food scanner, and plenty of other features. In short, you get 7 days free to try it out and see for yourself. Because in the end, the real message is simple. You don't need to be The Rock, you just need to be the best version of yourself. And that is within your reach.